With buyers growing increasingly frustrated and tired of market realities, there are growing fears that the housing market may be reaching a breaking point. From February 2020 to April 2023, we have witnessed the median housing payment for new buyers go from $1,250 to $2,500. In these wild 26 months, the typical buyer is now paying 100% more for an average house in the United States. We have now reached a point where buying real estate is simply unattainable for most people with regular jobs. The 1-2 punch of prices and interest rates rising exponentially at the same exact time pushed the market to a place we have never seen before. In a bizarre twist of economics, the perfect storm of variables came together to produce misery for millions of buyers across the country. Today we find ourselves at a crossroad. After finally seeing evidence of a downturn with values falling for the first time in 11 years, many are starting to believe that the housing market is primed for an implosion, one that will result in prices declining faster and lower than in 2008. Like I've mentioned many times on this channel, the start of this downturn in the summer of 2022 did indeed begin at a pace we have never seen before, and even right now, based on the latest Case-Shiller release, we are ahead of pace as far as the crash is concerned, down 5.5% in less than 1 year. Last time we rolled over at this point, we were only down around 1.5%, meaning that while it may not feel like it, today's housing downturn is starting off nearly 3 times worse than the Great Crash of 2008. But despite these facts, the questions in the market linger. Will this continue? How much lower is it going? To answer this, we look to the latest RedFin report packed with information right from the ground, and what you're seeing is exactly what I get in the comments after nearly every video upload. Sure, there are many places where prices are declining, like the West Coast, but for most people, buying a home today still remains a challenge as prices in many East Coast and Midwest markets remain stable. It's still not uncommon to see homes listed less than a week. In fact, according to Redfin's own numbers, of the houses that go under contract, nearly half are doing so in under 2 weeks. That's up from about 1/4 at the start of the year, an unusually quick winter increase. And the story of the spring sort of goes against the crash narrative. You're seeing median asking prices remain elevated. Based on the latest chart, you can easily spot that we are on pace to break last year's asking price record. Typically, due to seasonality, we see this number reach a peak in early June before dropping off for the rest of the year, and right now, coming off the winter lows, we are 1.4% ahead of schedule with asking prices higher than what they were last year around this time. The only good news in this for buyers is that while sellers are asking for higher prices, they're failing to receive them. Median sale prices remain behind last year's record numbers, but not by much, yet this small weakness showcases that maybe this year's summer season won't live up to the hype of last year's, and we're currently ushering in a new crash. Remember, the last crash that happened took over 5 years to play out. We like to imagine that things happen like they do in the movies, late board meetings where the music suddenly stops, but housing values themselves don't really operate this way. Real estate meltdowns move very slow, and if we are indeed in one right now, we are only in year 1, slowly entering into year 2 come July. At the end of the day, we can look at all the charts in the world, but only one thing really matters, and to explain it, we first need to understand a sequence of important data points to describe this entire bubble and subsequent crash that will follow. But before I show you, please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the content thus far. This is only my second video since taking a small break from YouTube, and it would mean a lot if you could hit that like icon to get into good terms with the algorithm once again. Now back to what I was saying. You see, even though we've seen strong evidence of price declines in the market, there's still a massive parachute preventing prices from simply free falling to the ground. This parachute is inventory, but inventory only tells part of the story. You see, right now, if you look across many markets in the United States, what you're seeing is new listings dropping off, meaning that people simply are not looking to sell. In fact, if we quickly go back to the Redfin data, we can see that new listings this year are about 22% lower than last year. This line is simply unprecedented when you compare it to 2021 and 2022. Of course, 2020 will remain an outlier in history considering we had a once-in-a-century shock, but outside of this line of active listings is simply incredible. People are refusing to sell in the market where interest rates are now around 6%. This is because 99% of current borrowers have a rate below the current market rate, and a large percentage of those have a rate closer to 3%. This fact is acting as a massive deterrent. Giving up a 3% mortgage to enter into a 6% one is a hard pill to swallow. Realistically, most of the people selling today are doing so due to strong reasons mostly related to unavoidable life events such as divorce, permanent relocation, or children. And this fact is causing inventory levels to remain extremely low in many markets. It's simple, buyers can't buy if sellers won't sell. Ultimately, to change this narrative and to enter into the next phase of the downturn, what we need to see is a change in financial conditions related to borrowing. And in order for that to happen, this guy named Jerome Powell needs to make some serious moves that I believe he's debating as we speak. You see, at the center of the housing market, we have mortgages. They are the lifeline of the entire market, and the way they get priced is something you have to understand if you want to fully comprehend what I'm trying to say right now. Most mortgages, including the one you signed or are looking to sign, are based on something called a 10-year treasury. Now, we're not going to get all deep into the mechanics of the mortgage industry because honestly, it makes for a very boring YouTube video, but in simple terms, it works like this. The 10-year treasury yield is essentially how much the government will pay you for a set amount of money. Today, the rate is 3.4%, and based off this rate, various institutions create mortgage products. Now, you might be asking, why are mortgage rates 6% today? That's a lot higher than 3.4%. Well, there is a second component, and it's called the spread. This is the amount of money various institutions add on to this 10-year yield to come up with a 30-year mortgage number. The more risk they see, the more they add on, and so forth. Most of the time, the spread ranges between 1.5 and 2%, which means today the spread is a bit higher, reflecting more risk. Now, to get into the second phase of this crash, what we need to see is rates come down while demand stays flat or declines. And you might be asking yourself, how is that possible? If rates come down, demand will go up. Just using simple logic, lower rates will incentivize more people to buy, but this is not necessarily true when you investigate history. For example, from 2006 to 2012, a period where home prices declined nearly 30% nationwide, interest rates at the same time fell from nearly 7% to 3.5%. So how is that possible? Well, what you need to see, unfortunately, is this: an increase in the unemployment rate. For example, in the last crash, the unemployment rate went from 4.4% to nearly 10%, and it was only in the months following max unemployment that we saw housing prices bottom. And the idea behind this is rather simple on the surface. In order to increase supply, you need sellers, and sellers will begin to appear once interest rates get closer to that 3% number. But that alone won't be enough. What you really want to see is sellers appear while buyers remain suppressed, causing balance to be disturbed in the supply and the demand. Unfortunately, the only way you can prevent buyers from appearing in an environment where interest rates fall is to destroy the economy, thereby increasing the unemployment rate. This is what happened in the last crash. Buyers were suppressed by a falling economy and sellers were incentivized by low interest rates initially. This caused a lopsided supply and demand outcome that was further fueled by decreasing prices. Once the avalanche begins, it leads to a self-feeding loop that increases in severity. Sellers who were on the fence look at prices decreasing month to month and begin to panic sell in order to avoid further losses. And as the tide from seller's market to buyer's market turns, everything begins to switch up. Buyers who are in a good financial state to buy see rapidly decreasing prices and now wait for further discounts in a rapid deflationary loop. If you look at a chart of the 2008 housing crash, you can see the value decreases start off slow, but once they get going, there was no stopping the carnage. It almost acts as an avalanche, beginning as a small hint of destruction that gathers momentum and speeds up until it destroys everything in its path, quickly coming to a stop at the bottom. Remember what I said earlier about today's Case-Shiller. The changes are small, but anytime there has been a hint of a downturn in this index, there is potential for an avalanche, and right now we are in month 6 of the downturn. The last crash had a total of 68 months, meaning that based on the previous crash, we aren't even finished with the first inning. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it. Let me know what you're seeing in your local markets, especially if you live in the Midwest or East Coast, where prices remain relatively resilient to this current downturn.